What was the significance of Fort Sumter in the American Civil War? If you're curious about the events that kicked off the American Civil War, you're likely wondering about the significance of Fort Sumter. Let's break it down. Fort Sumter, located in Charleston Harbor, South Carolina, was a crucial military installation that played a pivotal role in the start of the Civil War. Here's why it's so important. First, let's go back to why Fort Sumter was built. After the British captured and occupied Washington during the War of 1812, the U.S. decided to fortify its harbors. Fort Sumter was one of these forts, constructed on an artificial island in Charleston Harbor to protect the city from naval attacks. By 1861, the fort was still incomplete, but it was garrisoned by Union troops under Major Robert Anderson. When Abraham Lincoln became president, he faced a crisis. The Confederates, who had seceded from the Union, demanded that the Union troops leave Fort Sumter. Lincoln decided to resupply the fort, which led to an ultimatum from the Confederates. On April 12, 1861, the Confederates, under General P.G.T. Beauregard, began bombarding Fort Sumter. This was the first military action of the American Civil War. The Union troops returned fire, but they were outnumbered and outgunned. After 34 hours of bombardment, Major Anderson agreed to evacuate the fort. The significance of Fort Sumter lies in several key points. It marked the beginning of the American Civil War, a conflict that would last 4 years, claim over 620,000 lives, and ultimately lead to the abolition of slavery. The battle at Fort Sumter was the spark that ignited the war, prompting both the North and South to call for volunteers to mobilize for war. Following the surrender, Lincoln called for 75,000 volunteers to suppress the rebellion, which led to 4 more Southern states seceding and joining the Confederacy. This chain of events set the stage for the long and bloody conflict that followed. During the war, Fort Sumter remained in Confederate hands until February 1865, when it was evacuated as Union forces, led by General William T. Sherman, approached Charleston. The fort was heavily damaged during the war, especially during the Union's attempts to retake it in 1863. On April 14, 1865, exactly 4 years after the fort's surrender, Major General Robert Anderson, now ill and retired, returned to Fort Sumter to raise the American flag once more. This ceremony marked a symbolic end to the war, though it was overshadowed by the assassination of President Lincoln on the same day. In summary, Fort Sumter was more than just a military outpost. It was the site where the American Civil War began, setting off a chain of events that would change the course of American history. Its significance lies in its role as the first battleground of the Civil War and the lasting impact it had on the nation.